Good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much for coming. We have everybody in attendance at the board except for Doug Turnbull, who joined us earlier today, and will be rejoining us, later from London, England. And Mr. Halstead is unable to join us today. He was with us yesterday for all the committee meetings, but he had to attend to urgent business in Jamaica today. There's an important cricket match involving Jamaica, India, and others in Jamaica today, and given his long and distinguished record as a cricketer, he had to be there rather than with us. But he did lead us very well yesterday in the governance committee, as he always does. I have no other announcements to make other than to acknowledge that our colleague, Francis Langton, has recently been appointed chair of the Ontario Press Council, which is a position of importance to every Ontarian, but particularly to those members of the media present, as she plays a particularly important role there. And it's a great credit to you, Francis, and we sit happily in your reflected glory. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That brings us to the second item on the agenda, which is our CEO's report. Bruce, how's it going?
It's going very well. There's lots been going on since the board was last together on May the 27th when we considered the investment strategy. And you'll see a lot of that reflected in the content of the reports today. On the investment strategy, I'd just like to point out that John Howe and other members of the team have been very hard at work in terms of reaching out to stakeholders, municipalities, other groups to discuss the recommendations that this board has made to the province and municipalities, the rationale, answer questions, and it's been very much a busy program over the past month, in essence, to reach out to as many people as we possibly can. On the agenda today, we have the 2013-14 business plan, and the board will see that's our largest capital budget that we've ever experienced here at Metrolinx at $2.76 billion, which represents a significant increase over the past year's budget. On Go Transit, just a reminder, I know that Gary is going to remind everybody as well, but I'd like to emphasize that on Saturday that we launched the 30-minute off-peak service on the Lakeshore Corridor and the largest ever increase in level of service on the Go Transit program. And on the Presto, Rob will be speaking to a number of items, including the ongoing deployment in Ottawa, where we now have about 100,000 cards in distribution to customers in their pockets and wallets and purses. And we've just completed a successful conversion to the software here in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And then finally, on the Rapid Transit Implementation Program, we had a very good event over the past month in terms of turning on the tunnel boring machine on the Eglinton Crosstown, and the tunneling has started in earnest. And on the York Viva Bus Rapid Transit Program continues to progress very, very well. We'll be opening our first segment ahead of schedule this summer, and more will be coming out on that very soon. So it's just a few highlights, but it's been a very active month since our last meeting, and I think you'll see that in the reports that staff will be bringing forward today. Thank you.
Good job. Questions to our president. What's your assessment of how the investment strategy went down?
My perspective is that I'm pleased with the amount of exposure the recommendations have received, the response. There's been a lot of supportive response from stakeholders, the Board of Trade, the Chamber of Commerce, Civic Action. A lot of municipalities have expressed support on a number of the recommendations. Yes, it's generated the debate in terms of whether or not the tools that this board recommended are the right tools, but I think that's exactly the kind of debate we wanted to have, and this based on the evidence that we had before. So I think the board recommendations have been quite well received, and yes, there's going to be people who believe and organizations who believe that there should be other tools, but as we go through the evidence, the one thing that I've noted in all the discussions, it really gets down to not why or whether the information to support the recommendations was the right information. It's really about the principled conversation about what makes up the best way to pay for infrastructure, and that's the kind of conversation we should be having. It's the adult conversation that people have been looking for.
And can you say a little bit more about what's going to happen next and what you think the timelines would be for decision and how this is going to play out?
The Minister of Transportation spoke at the Toronto Region Board of Trade on Monday morning, and he was asked about the rollout from the provincial perspective, and he spoke about the end part of the process being in the spring 2014 budget, where decision making would be embedded in, but there could also be some initial or accelerated decision making for the fall. He also spoke about the creation of high occupancy toll lanes as being the first step of implementation. And I know that the Premier spoke at a conference in Ottawa yesterday that's been reported on positively again about the need for investment tools to support the growth of our transit and transportation system in the region. So the province is thinking very hard, I think, about how to take our advice, get input from others, and move it through towards implementation.
So Bonnie and then Francis.
Just this is a sample of one, Bruce, so it may be not representative, but I've had at least a half a dozen conversations since the release of the strategy, where it was really clear that who pays in what location for what in what location. And there was a fair bit of confusion that I was able to quite easily correct and say, well, have another look at it. In this section you'll find blah, 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 and it's not quite the way you've articulated it. So do we have some additional efforts in play that will help people understand what isn't nuance, but is really pretty fundamental to the kind of recommendations? So I'm in a particular community and I pay in this new way, what happens to my money and our community commitment to it? Is there something more going on in that regard?
My question's on the same.
Francis, why don't you intervene and then we'll come back to Bruce and then we'll see if anybody else wants to raise it.
In other parts, outside of the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, other parts of the province, there is a great deal of misunderstanding that any money that might be raised through a sales tax increase, if that was an option that the government chooses, wouldn't remain in those communities and that it would go to subsidize Toronto Transit. And it provokes the perennial anti-Toronto sort of feeling. I understand that at a certain point in time, we have produced a report with recommendations, and it is over to the political process of the province for them to further the consultations and arrive at some decisions. And there's a handoff that has to happen around certainly not advocacy on our part for these. We've made our recommendations. But is there still a role for us to be clarifying what our recommendations actually are? And if that's the case, to the same point as Bonnie, that's what I've been hearing. And it would be really lovely to try and get that one nailed down by a specific strategy to reach out to the media, the municipalities outside of this greater area here.
Yeah, absolutely, and one of the areas of clarity that we've tried to be quite assertive on is, basically the fundamental statement that we have not recommended, nor would we recommend, that communities outside of the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area would contribute to infrastructure within this region. That the money raised in this region would be for infrastructure in this region. And if there were other approaches taken outside of the GTHA, it would be to fund their priorities, not to fund the Toronto and Hamilton areas' priorities. So we've tried to be very quick and direct in terms of reaching out to media in other communities where that issue has come up. We've noted in a variety of places around the province where there's been confusion on that. So we've immediately reached out to those communities and sent a clarification. And we need to continue to do that, and we need to continue to basically reach out as best we can to all the organizations so that it's clear that nothing that we've recommended would see the rest of the province investing in the transit and transportation system in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. That's not embedded in our recommendations.
Janet, was that scratching your chin or thinking, or one other question?
No. Bruce, can you just elaborate a little bit on it? Because one of the other feedback pieces that I've had is people are missing, I think, the recommendation that looking at alternative ways to fund, to build, etc., some of these projects, exploring private sector options where that makes sense, et cetera. Because that's another thing that in some of the conversations I've had has been missed, I think, and as one of the recommendations in the report. So are you getting that feedback generally, or is there an awareness that we are actually, potentially going to be exploring those things?
Yeah, well, there are almost 30 recommendations in the report, and a lot of the focus has been on the specific investment tools that are recommended, so the 4. One of our challenges has been to communicate to as many different groups as possible the whole range of recommendations, including that the board and Metrolinx sees a significant role for the private sector in the delivery of infrastructure. We've identified as one of the recommendations that all projects over $50 million in value should go through a value for money exercise to determine if there's an alternative way that it should be delivered, that we see a viable role for the private sector in the delivery of our program. So we've been trying to raise that particular item, as well as the other 22 or 23 odd recommendations that haven't kind of seen the same focus from the media coverage, just because of the nature of the recommendation. So that's been part of our program. We typically have a communications package that talks about 4 or 5 key themes. One theme being the investment tools, another theme being some of the recommendations we built into the package on building trust and accountability, because we think that's really important as well. The role of both regional and local infrastructure that we're recommending that the investment strategy support, we think that's really important as well. They don't get as much of the attention when we speak to them, but they're big parts of the advice from the board.
Have any of the criticisms of the report resonated strongly with you? Knowing what you know now, would you write anything different? Would you recommend? We made but would we amend anything in the report if we could reissue the report tomorrow?
I don't think that there would be a fundamental shift that I would recommend at this point to the board in terms of the advice that we've given. There are different groups who come forward with their perspective on how a particular tool impacts their sector. Whether that's the building industry and development charges, or whether that's the property industry and the business parking levy. But we had talked about all those kinds of issues as a board, as staff, before we made the recommendations, and I think we were aware that those were going to be the kinds of issues that would arise. I would say, based on the evidence, I still feel quite confident on the advice that's been given to the board, and then the advice that the board adopted.
Great. Anything else for the CEO? That brings us then to the next item on the agenda, which is the Go Transit report. Gary McNeil. Gary, thank you.
Yes, to report just on where GO stands right now up to the June timeframe, and just let you know that your GO division has been working very hard to deliver the services for our customers, as well as a lot of the infrastructure around this greater area. Our rail on-time performance has actually been very, very well maintained. We have a target of 92% in our passenger charter, and we have consistently been in the 95% range. And actually in March we hit 97% on-time performance, which is actually the highest on-time performance that has ever been reached in GO's history. So again, it's a reflection really of the dedication of the staff that are working on this, as well as a lot of our service providers. Bombardier, of course, are providing a lot of our train maintenance and crewing activity in the case of the rail corridor. Strong ridership growth consistently across the system. This is just a little bit of an indication of it. This is really in what I'd call a capacity-constrained environment that actually we're still maintaining strong growth. Unfortunately, in the rush hours, as I'll indicate in my passenger charter, we're still having a lot of standees on our trains, but people continue to come to GO as a source of service, of a means of getting to and from both the downtown core as well as to other parts of the region. Our bus service has been doing exceedingly well, providing service to the universities across the northern part of the Greater Toronto Area, and that's been very, very successful. Our passenger charter itself, we're banging away on all cylinders. Probably, like I said before, the biggest challenge really is in the comfort of the experience on the GO train. And again, it's because we just don't have enough seats, we don't have enough service out there. The big move, of course, addresses the fact of how do we get more service out there, which will hopefully address a lot of these issues. In the meantime, we continue to explore different ways of trying to provide more service wherever possible with the assets that we have available. The other area is keeping in the know. It seems that the public are just information starved all the time, and as fast as you can get information out, they want it even faster. And it's a reflection really of our digital age, and we have a 5-year plan with our IT to push forward further and further into getting information, real live information out to the customers on a regular basis. The Customer Service Advisory Committee is very active in that because as riders and users of our system, they're providing a lot of input to us. We finished actually what I'd call one of the major elements of corridor acquisition really this past year. It's really something that we started with CN. This is a reflection really of what it was like in 1998, which was the year before I actually joined GO Transit, which really shows that out of all the corridors, we owned a very, very small part in 1998, and CN, of course, owned the lion's share. Over the last number of years, we've been gradually acquiring more and more corridors from CN, who recognized that a number of these corridors were not critical to their freight business. They provided local service, and therefore it was not necessary for them to actually have ownership. And we've gone really from that 6% to a 68%, which is really an amazing change really in the railway map. But also it's a reflection too of our on-time performance, because by owning these corridors we've now gone in and maintained them to a much higher level, which is necessary for our service delivery side and our on-time performance. So this really correlates with our whole plan of actually owning the infrastructure, which then allows us to maintain it to a high level and to expand it, which is all part of the big move of how do we get in and move forward with more track capacity as well as electrification. Service improvements, Bruce indicated our big move this weekend is going to 30-minute service on the Lakeshore line. And I think this really is going to be one of the major changes really in GO. That 30-minute window just opens up a whole realm of service for the public, where they don't really think now of a train every hour. They just think that there's going to be a train and they'll arrive at the station. And as the minister said in a previous discussion that we had, he said they can now rip up their schedules on the Lakeshore line. Well, I don't think they'll quite rip up their schedules, but really it does show that this is really going to be a major change. And also we're going to be returning to our seasonal weekend service on the Barrie line as well as Niagara Falls. So we did a Niagara run on the May long weekend, and now we start our weekend service to Niagara Falls for the rest of the summer. Recent announcements, we 25 new lower double-deck buses, and these are slightly lower, so they actually hit that height requirement of the highway in the commercial vehicle code. So they're not over height vehicles anymore. So this will allow us to actually put more double-deck buses out on different parts of the system. Very, very cost-effective way of providing service, because that one bus driver is now carrying about 50 more people, so it's or 30 more people. So it really is a very cost-effective way of getting service out. We've also, in partnership with IMA, who's one of our advertising agencies, launched Wi-Fi pilot at a number of our GO stations. We've got 11 stations up on May 13th, and that's not being strongly received by the public, but actually we get a lot of compliments for it. So it's one of these things where, because a lot of people when they come to our stations, they're rushing to get to the train, get to the bus or whatever, so they really aren't spending a lot of time at the station. But those that actually could possibly have missed the train or missed the bus spend a little bit of time on their computers or on their smartphones and using the service that IMA provides. Number of construction milestones. There's a little bit of work going on at Union Station, if anyone's been through there recently. It's actually, and this is a strong reflection really of the efforts of the GO team, the City of Toronto, as well as TTC, because there is major construction going on there with those three parties. And the contractors are working cooperatively together. We're managing to do massive movements of concrete and steel and glass and everything as the atrium comes up, while we're maintaining a very active station facility. customers are being very responsive. We get very limited number of complaints, even though we're pushing people all over the place, changing their platforms and everything. I think there, though, the public is actually seeing what's going on. So they know that they're in the middle of a construction zone, and at the end of the rainbow, there's going to be a beautiful facility that's built here. So I think this is really an amazing reflection of the resiliency of our customer base, as well as the strength of the various construction companies and organizations that are working here. Another good news story was in the Pickering GO station, where actually we got LEED Gold certification really for this station building that we built in Pickering. We had originally been targeting for silver, and actually going through the process, we actually qualified for LEED Gold, which is actually one of the first LEED Gold facilities that we've built on the system. So and this particular image that you have here actually shows where we're actually tapping into the geothermal system to provide HVAC requirements at the station. So a very cost-effective way of trying to heat and cool the station facility itself. Georgetown South Project and Strawn Avenue, another part of the world where massive amounts of construction are going on. We're about 95% of all the construction contracts have been awarded in this corridor now, and literally we got 20 miles of construction underway. And very, very strong activity right now of ensuring that the local neighborhoods where we're doing all this construction are aware of what's going on. But it shows really that we're gradually moving along. The Strawn Avenue overpass will soon be actually moving from the north side of the corridor to the south side of the corridor, moving the tracks over, which will really make a big difference through there, because the trains will be able to go through without having to cross at Strawn Avenue, which is one of the major congestion points actually in the city because of the train activity that happens there. So a lot of work that's going on there. We made an announcement up at East Gwillimbury. Again, it's one of these things where both on the rail side and the bus side, we're building a new bus maintenance facility up in East Gwillimbury to replace our old Newmarket facility, where actually the Viva services will be moving into our old facility, combining it with their existing facility that's right adjacent to ours. So this again is an area where we've cooperatively worked with one of our other transit partners, one of our other municipalities here, to actually, where they can use our asset and we're moving into a newer asset, which actually works better for us from an operations perspective. New station building happening in Burlington. This is actually going to be a beautiful building when it's finished. We work very, very closely with the municipality. There's a lot of construction going on. And parking. Again, we've got the Arundel parking structure, and this is a constant story for us where we're building parking structures to attract more and more people and more ridership. In order to get to 69 million riders this year, we do have to provide more parking across our system. So we've got the Arundel parking structure that'll be opening later this summer, and work is proceeding both with Ajax and Pickering and Clarkson as well, where we'll soon be opening up those parking structures as well in order to attract more and more customers to our system. I put a little thing in here which actually came in right near the end of the reporting period that I was reporting on, which really is a little storm that happened on May 29th, which actually saw some severe flooding. The Don Valley Parkway, of course, was closed down for an extended period of time as a result of the storm that came in. And actually, it's really a reflection of the fact that a lot of stormwater gets pumped into the Don River and comes down to the bottom end, where you've got a very shallow area, sandbar essentially, which acts as a dam almost as the water comes down and causes flooding to occur in this area. But the main issue wasn't so much the fact that our tracks were underwater. The main issue really was that the rain actually came down in such strong torrents that we actually had major areas of the embankment area that actually started washed away, that were actually above the water flood lines. This was just the water coming down and digging out the ballast. And we'll be bringing back something to the board, but for the next board period, I think, where it explains actually the actions of one of our contractors that were out in the field that actually a person went, I would call, over and above the call of duty to actually stop a major incident from happening out in this particular area because of knowing fully well that what the condition of the track could be. He went beyond the call of duty to help us. And this is an area where, the Don floods, once a year usually, and usually we have a little bit of disruption here at the end. And we're working very closely right now. We're trying to push a little bit harder with the Conservation Authority in the City of Toronto really on the whole question of the Don flooding, because not only is it an impact for us when our Richmond Hill corridor shuts down, but also the Don Valley Parkway, which is actually a major thoroughfare into the city. So when you have disruptions like this happening, we've got to look at what kind of solutions that we have that may be available for it.
Where's that picture on the left, Gary?
On the left, that's actually down towards almost near the Evergreen area, down at the base area. Yeah, and that's really where a lot of the major flooding happens, which is down at the bottom end, where the water comes in. And in this particular case, when the water gets to that level, we don't run trains over it, just for fear of the actual ballast being washed out underneath. But typically right afterwards we do an inspection right away to make sure that the ballast and everything is protected. In areas like this where the water just kind of fills up, you really don't lose anything because you don't have it's not a churning of water. Whereas in the case where the water came down from the embankments, that's really where you get major undercutting occurring. So, but the good news on this was the fact that really, even though we had major flooding, had to shut down the corridor, we really only lost one train run that day because we worked very closely with CN, who allowed us to divert trains across the York subdivision, which is across the north part of the city, and then come back down into the city either on the Georgetown line or the Barrie line. So that even though the Richmond Hill corridor was shut down, we managed to move people still from Richmond Hill down. And I think that really is a testament, again, of working in partnership with the railways, with our other people to solve this issue. And you can't manage the weather, as our friends in Calgary have discovered recently. It's major elements. And finally, what for me is actually the penultimate moment, really, I think, for GO is that we have been recently awarded the 2013 APTA Award for Outstanding Public Transportation System in North America for large systems. This is like winning the Oscar for the best picture in the transit industry. This is probably the best and highest recognition that we could have in North America. And North America, of course, is America as well as Canada. So we put our name in against Chicago's and New York's and Los Angeles and everything else like that, and we were recognized as being one of the best. And again, they look at everything from the way you treat your customers to your communications information, your HR policies, right across the board. And that's why I call it, it's like your best picture, because it looks at every aspect really of the way you deliver your service. And winning this award really is a reflection, I think, really of strong support that we've had from all of our boards in moving and pushing GO forward. The province in supporting us from a financial perspective as well as from a policy perspective. So I think this is really, I mean, we've won it. GO's won it as a system, but really, I think really it's the entire province of Ontario that's won this. It really is a reflection of how we want to push our transit, all of our transit systems to being the best, really. And I think this is just a fantastic thing for our organization to have won. So.
Outstanding, Gary. Congratulations to you and through you to all of your team for this one of these cases where sustained leadership makes a big difference. And you've given us great sustained leadership, so congratulations. Questions to Gary. I have one just to get us started, which is there a widespread agreement within GO that it was the move to replace Greg Percy with Paul Finnerty that's led to these 97% results? Is that kind of where it all came from?
Well, the one thing I can honestly say about GO is that it's not one person. We do work as a team.
Paul's waving back there saying it is one person.
It is. But,
It's me.
Yeah, but I think again, it's it took us we've been working on this on-time performance for a long time, and it's now it's reflecting itself very, very positively. So.
Fabulous result. There were some questions over here.
Yeah, thank you very much for a great report. I was on the GO train actually the day after the 30-minute announcement, and there was just wonderful, excited chatter. It was kind of fun listening to it all around the car about people talking about it. And secondly, just the customer service people. Again, I just have witnessed where someone had a serious medical emergency and all that. I mean, they seem to be really, really good. I mean, so I've been quite impressed with watching them, and they do make great efforts at 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning to be cheerful to people. And so hats off. But I did have a question. Do we have a policy around? It sounds like a small point, but One day on the train, the track had to change at the last minute. The train was coming in, a minute or two before it was supposed to depart, and you had a whole bunch of people with disabilities on another track. And they had to get down the stairs and in the elevator, and as you know, those elevators take, et cetera, and there was a fair degree of agitation amongst them about were they going to miss the train or whatever, and there wasn't another announcement that said anything about, we'll hold the train, till you get on or something like that, and I just had, watched it. So I don't know whether we do that on a regular basis, and again, it may sound like a small point, but there were a lot of really very irritated, unhappy, and fearful, actually. A couple people were were trying to rush with varying degrees of disabilities, and it just struck me as being just sort of one of those little things that might improve the experience for customers.
Yeah, our biggest challenge is the fact that when the train actually switches the track from one side to the other, that's really controlled by CN, and it's controlled from a remote location, and they're basically looking at a little blob on the map of something moving, not really understanding what the consequences of their actions may be. And one of our strategic plans really is actually to move over to take control over actual train movement, because then actually we can then notify the station attendant well in advance of that movement happening. Because it's not like CN instantaneously said, oh, I think I better move the train from this track to another. They probably knew 5 minutes or so in advance that they were going to have to do that. But because that CN dispatcher is actually also at the same time dealing with train movements in Montreal and all across the northeastern part of North America, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to move this and move that, not really realizing what the consequences to the people. So, but as soon as we find out, we try to get the information out to our customers right away that move the platform and everything. And if at all possible, if we actually know that people are actually held back, we'll hold the train back.
Yeah,
and it's really trying to get that information out to the customer.
Right. Yeah.
And like I said earlier, the challenge for us always in this digital world is that the customers actually know things quite often before we even know them, because they're experiencing it at the moment, and we have to try to get a few seconds ahead of them, and it's going to take a while, but it's another area that we know we're working towards. Just like we think, touch wood, that we've solved the on-time performance issue. Now the next thing is how do we get that communication message out much more better to all of our customers.
Howard, I'm going to give you the last word because I'm conscious of the clock.
Gary, in terms of the flooding that took place, how much vulnerability exists in the system with respect to, certainly weather cannot be predicted, but mitigation can take place, and how vulnerable are the other corridors?
Most of the other corridors are actually pretty good. We don't really have very major elements of major flooding, although you can never, like if we had another Hurricane Hazel come in, that'd be a different story, because the world turns upside down when those kind of things happen. And we've had some very, very major storms which have come through, and as far as water control is concerned, all the other corridors actually very well. We've got strong bridges that cross them. The Dawn is a unique one because there you got the actual rail corridors kind of coming down. And when we actually do move to double tracking that corridor as part of the big move of up increasing the service, we'll be looking at various mitigation measures of how do we actually protect it, from strengthening the embankment to elevating the track in certain areas and controlling it. But for the short term, really, all we can really do is monitor and try to be ahead of the game, and we are actually working with the Conservation Authority and the City of Toronto, who actually have some monitoring devices in place which actually show elevations of water to give them a sense that you're getting kind of one of those, I'll call them instantaneous flooding occurrences from happening, so that we're aware of that on the track level as well, so that we can get the information out to make sure that we don't send trains down that corridor at that time.
Great, thank you very much, Gary. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
We have the next 3 reports have each been allocated 10 minutes. And I'm going to ask each of the presenters to do them in 7 instead of 10, because we're 10 minutes behind. And if you all comply with that, we will be back on schedule. So the first 7-minute presenter, including time for questions, is Kathy Haley.
Thank you,
UT
Chair.
Express update.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to give you an update. It's really quite remarkable the amount of progress that's happened over the past many months. I'm just so proud of the team and the work that we're doing, and I'm delighted to give you an update, particularly on construction. This spring actually marked the 2-year countdown to our launch. It's hard to believe I've been here for 2 years now, which has gone by very quickly, and so 2 years will go by in the blink of an eye. And here we'll be 2 years from now where we'll be proudly having the world welcoming Union Pearson Express to Toronto and showcasing this remarkable effort to the world. The momentum has become increasingly visible. Hopefully you've been able to see it in the marketplace. The designs and plans are coming to life, the infrastructure is very visible, and elements are taking place across the Toronto landscape. So I'm really excited to think that in less than 24 months, a much anticipated project of the big move will come to life, and we'll see it in the marketplace every 15 minutes, 7 days a week. It's really quite remarkable. In terms of the project, we have over 100 projects with 6 work streams underway. Quite an ambitious project management program underway to make sure that we deliver every one of those elements meticulously on time. They cover everything from capital infrastructure, construction, technology, fare systems, operations, multi-channel customer service, marketing, business development. So meticulous scheduling underway, and I'm very pleased about the progress there. In terms of budget, we are right on budget, $465 million of our capital project, and $75 million of that capital budget has been committed to date. As of next month, we will have 100% of our construction underway. Gary just mentioned the prestigious ABDA award. I was delighted that the Union Pearson Express was acknowledged as the project of the year internationally at the Global Air Rail Awards in Munich last month. This was in testament to recognized as the most inspiring project, the most inspiring air rail link project with the most compelling vision, a winning customer-focused strategy, and impressive construction progress that's been underway. When you think that there's over 224 airport rail links around the world, this is really quite impressive and marks quite a significant milestone for the project and really recognizes the extended team within Metrolinx, in addition to the number of suppliers and contractors that we have that work so tirelessly on this project. And I might add with great pride, it seems like everyone that touches this project is really quite excited about being part of such a legacy piece. Just in terms of construction, perhaps the most visible and impressive sign of the construction is it's a 3-kilometer elevated spur which connects directly the Go Kitchener corridor into Toronto Pearson Terminal 1. Now, at the time the airport was being built, there wasn't anticipated to have a dedicated rail link into the airport. So you can imagine that we're going to have to weave the track. If you look at this aerial view among hydro lines and buildings and infrastructure and highways, so it's really quite a remarkable engineering feat as we get into the airport. Last year there was no visible signs of construction, and we started construction last June, and we will be completed by the summer of 2014. Today, if you drive along the 409 highway into the airport, you'll see along that 3-kilometer stretch 70 piers that actually dot the highway, and at its highest point, soaring 28 meters in the air. So that will really provide impressive views of Toronto. Quite a legacy landmark again as people are coming into the city. The bridge girders connecting the piers are currently being installed, and the concrete decks are being poured. And all of this is to allow the track to be laid into the station terminal, which will happen shortly. The station itself, which we'll call the Pearson Station, Toronto Pearson Station, started construction on March 26th of 2013, just after March break, and this is located adjacent to the airport rail link, which carries passengers between Terminal 1 and Terminal 3. Being an elevated structure built within a confined and secure area of the airport, it's a challenging project, but it's progressing extremely well. The scaffolding is installed, the tower crane is erected, and 72% of the beams have been installed. To accommodate construction, of course, we had to close the link station and the operations around that. So to minimize disruption for the employees and the airport passengers, we do have dedicated bus services to transport them to Terminal 3 link and to the parking lots, and that's been working extremely well. The station itself will be quite an impressive welcome to the city. This too was designed for excellence. And with the construction scheduled to be completed by the end of the year, we will then begin the various fit-out elements. And this has been inspired by really the beautiful sense of Ontario and the sense of place, and all of the elements, materials, design, structural elements are built in to reflect that. So there'll be an environment of warm and welcoming ambiance. The design will be complemented by amenities that will impress our guests. We'll have uninterrupted Wi-Fi, mobile connections, convenient ticketing, including kiosks, mobile and onboard purchases, seating in areas for quick purchasing if people want a quick check into their laptop or their emails, clearly demarcated signage and wayfinding, and platform edge doors so guests can remain in a climate-controlled environment from the trains to the stations. The Weston Station is fully integrated design with GO Station, and construction will start in July, and completion will be in 2014. Here's a glimpse of Bloor Station. Preliminary construction work is underway, and we will be completing that in December of 2014. The landmark location, our flagship, is at Union Station, and the tender is closed in mid-June, and construction will start actually next month. So we'll be completing this magnificent piece in January of 2015. And the first floor will have a combination of many amenities, and the second floor will be a mezzanine with additional space for customers and for staff as well. Here you can see the inside of the Union Station. What's really quite remarkable, here's the front cab shell construction for the vehicles, which are currently being manufactured at Nippon Sharyo, which is the manufacturing division of Sumitomo Corporation in Tokyo. Manufacturing started in January 2013 for the 18 vehicles. Just imagine this. Here's what it will transform into. So the front cab of the shell from this to this. And these vehicles will be arriving here in May of next year. So imagine this will really signify quite a significant milestone for the city when we'll actually be seeing them live, and we'll be testing and commissioning them along the corridor before we actually go live in the spring of 2015. So quite a remarkable accomplishment overall, lots of activity underway, and we're very proud of the progress to date.
Yeah. Exciting.
Very exciting.
Great job, no time for questions, sorry. Next is Presto update. Robert, you got 6 minutes. 5.
No pressure.
Between 5 and 6 total, including questions.
It's always difficult to follow my colleagues. We haven't won any awards yet, but we are pleased to tell you there's been progress over the last period of time. At the end of February, we hit our 500,000 card mark for the GTHA, and we ran a contest to provide some appreciation to our customers for helping us get to there. So we had 24,000 customers entered the contest, and we had over 4,000 of those customers offer us their views on why Presto is a wonderful system to use. And so we had 10 winners that were selected. They got a voucher that went on to their card. In April, OC Transpo Commission unanimously approved Presto to move forward and agreed to begin a phased deployment. The system's been operating very effectively throughout, with average tap rates of 99.95 throughout that process. And we're now recording over 70,000 rides a day on the system. In the GTHA, at the end of May, we underwent a significant upgrade to the system that marks the beginning of the Presto Next Generation for this region. And just to give you a sense of the scale, there were over 100 Presto transit partner and vendor staff performed over 1,400 tasks across that weekend. They moved almost 700,000 card records, 400 million transaction financial records, upgraded 6,000 devices in the field, and during that, we're able to maintain all the fare collection across the system without a blip. So great move. We're very well positioned for Presto Next Generation in terms of new functions and features in the future. In terms of metrics, the Presto uptake in the GTHA continues to drive forward. We're somewhere around 570,000 cards. We're up considerably even in the 4 months, 70,000 cards since April when we hit the $500,000 mark. We have fares paid over 100 million times with the tap of the Presto card. Most significantly in Ottawa, we had 15,000 cards deployed at the end of April, and we're now at 100,000 cards and growing. And there's another 50,000 cards that are already pre-allocated for special corporate plans that'll be migrated out over the period between now and October. In terms of adoption, there's an impressive rate of growth that's been reflected in the GTHA penetration compared to last year. GoTrans is now over 75% of their riders, which of course was bolstered by their elimination of more legacy fare media in January. We've also seen significant growth among the other transit providers in general across the region. We're up to 42% from 14%. And working with our transit agency partners, we still have significant work to do with them. But they've always said to us that moving to the new version of the Presto Next Generation provides the products and services that will help them drive adoption higher, such as monthly passes. We did a customer survey last year to start to hear from our customers about how they viewed the Presto service. And for about 70% of respondents, in terms of their top 3 choices, we ended up with 69% overall satisfaction, which isn't where we wanted, but it's a starting point for us. The likelihood to continue using Presto was very good at 87%, and the likelihood that they recommended at 75% is a good number, and we'd like to grow that higher. The bottom 2 issues that we heard from customers were around problem resolution and how we manage their other issues through the contact center. So we're going to put a major focus around better customer experience when issues arise and helping customers understand how the system works. So in terms of what's next coming from Presto, we'll be focused on delivering against a number of priorities in collaboration with our transit agencies. Our rollout in Ottawa will continue throughout the summer until deployment is completed in the fall. And we then need to move the Ottawa over to the same technology platform we've just moved the GTHA over. And once we do that, our cards will be interoperable between Ottawa and Toronto. So that means if you're traveling to Ottawa or come from Ottawa to Toronto, you can bring your Presto card by the end of the year. We're also continuing to work with the TTC to make sure that their streetcars are enabled for revenue service in the spring next year. It's a very scheduled challenge project, but we're working closely with the TTC to make sure that we can hit that target. We also understand customers want more points of access to load their cards. We have a number of programs underway to make sure that we can provide more options for loading their cards, working with their transit agencies. We also have some new options that we're working with our partners that they'll be able to introduce this summer. And into the future, working with our partners in terms of delivering standard models for some additional services, we're focused on self-service kiosks. We're looking at how we can enable transit-related parking and be able to pay for your Presto account. We're working with our partners as well on how we can deal with paratransit and integrate the third-party providers of the taxis and other third parties into the Presto system so that it's a seamless ride for the para users. And we're looking at doing a pilot and introducing debit and credit cards, working with the cardholder companies. So just quickly on the roadmap, plans into the future, our focus continues unabated on getting OC Transpo fully rolled out by the end of October. And we expect by then we'll have over 200,000 cards operating in the Ottawa area. And we continue to focus on the TTC not only for the new streetcars, but the whole program, working with the largest transit agency to make sure that we have an integrated, seamless experience right across the GTHA. And our target is to have that all completed in the 2016 timeframe, at which point we'll have 1.7 million additional riders through the TTC on the system. We'll also be exploiting the next generation platform that we've introduced to the GTHA to provide more options and services. And not to forget the Up Express in terms of being there in 2015 to provide all the fare collection on the vehicles, as well as the ability to buy a ticket from home.
Great job. Congratulations. Thanks for getting us in such good shape on this. You've done a really good job. We have a moment for a question for Robert, if who wants to ask it.
Just a really quick one. Great trajectory, by the way. My question has to do for 2015. We may already be thinking about it, but if you are coming to the Pan Am Games, will there be a mechanism to actually purchase and receive your Presto card in advance of getting it, much like they do with the Oyster card in London?
We're working very closely with the Pan Am committee to determine how we can integrate with them. We haven't arrived at any final solutions, but we are looking at a variety of ways to enable Presto for that program, but we haven't come to any
Be an
conclusion.
interesting thing to do, because you can buy your Oyster card here, so you can actually get it here before you show up.
So you can buy it and load it before you come and jump on the UP Express when
So
you
you don't
arrive
have
at the
people all
airport.
lined up everywhere looking.
Yeah, not specifically for Pan Am, but we're actually looking at being able to buy a card outside Ontario. Today, you can't buy a card outside Ontario. We already have an initiative underway to say you should be able to buy a card anywhere,
Right.
and that could supplement that program.
Francis, you were on the same point?
No, it's
Oh,
another
sorry,
point, right? Quickly, Robert, what is the challenge in moving to open payment, so in negotiating with the companies around debit or use of credit and or use of smart devices? Like, and when do we think we might be in that world?
Right, so it's a good question. The debit credit card, we have to work within the debit credit card rule set. So for instance, transactions, you're supposed to get a receipt. You're not going to get a receipt on a micropayment at paying for a ride on a vehicle. So how do we deal with it? Is the statement good enough? So that's one of the issues. We're also looking at, because we're not a fully online system, who manages the fraud, if there's any fraud in the system. So it's that first tap experience, what happens. So there's those types of subtleties we need to work through. So we're working with Interact Association, we're working with the credit card associations on a regular basis to figure out how the model can work. In terms of the experience, the simple experience is to actually use your debit credit card for a single ride, and that's what we're looking at. Is there are multiple tiers on how you could use credit cards, and we believe in the next year we should be in a position to work with one of our partners on a pilot. On the mobile front, that's an interesting question. We are actually working on some mobile applications that will help our clients access their accounts in the field. The challenge with actually eliminating a Presto card and using a mobile phone instead to tap a device, which you can theoretically do. But the problem is that the folks who make the chips for our card, the MyFair group who make the chips for transit, they don't have a solution that works on mobile yet. So we're working with the telcos, we're working with the chip manufacturers to figure out how you can make a secure connection over the air to enable a transit card to be eliminated and use a phone instead. So right now the technology doesn't exist for us to do it. You might have noticed the banks have recently launched mobile credentials. So CIBC and Rogers have MasterCard on a mobile phone. They spent considerable amount of money to get that in place. It is very bleeding edge right now. So we are monitoring the market. We're looking at when is the right time to jump.
Thank you very much. Great job. We're very, very happy with your leadership. Jack, you have the hardest assignment. You got to give a progress report with 3 minutes. We have various constraints at the back end of the meeting, and I'm sorry. So we're going to take your report as read, and if you could choose 2 of the slides to tell us what's important, we'll go from there.
While we're under construction, you can see one of 4 machines that are made right here in Toronto. There's tunnel boring machines made by Caterpillar out by the airport. They have been deployed in the west launch shaft area, which is near Kiel, and the machines are running. One machine is underway and working its way towards Kiel. A lot of the activity on the street that's visible is the contractors installing head walls at the ends of each station, and the machines will bore through those, and then later the actual stations will be constructed. Enbridge is actually out there starting utility relocations around the Allen Road area. And a major milestone, we are in another week or so going to be pulling out some of the old piles that were part of the old subway launch shaft back in 1995. So we're actually pulling those out, and they were actually a few of them are in the way of our machines. So that activity is underway. You can see some of our employees down there by the machine at the Caterpillar plant. We've made some minor adjustments to the alignment on the west end over by Kiel, just west of Kiel. We're going to go over the Black Creek Drive and into the maintenance facility. We had that approved through the City Council and as an environmental amendment, since it was a change to the original concept, which would have crossed Black Creek at grade. This is the concept right now. We're preserving Building 9. There was a referral to try to look at that area, which is the the bus depot area that you can see there that integrates with the light rail station that's right in front of the old Kodak Building 9 and the GO tracks. And try to preserve some of that area for development. We're working with a committee that Councillor Nunziata and Councillor DiGiorgio from the wards in that area have set up, and we continue to work with them and see if we can make some progress in terms of preserving that area for future development and also weaving it into what Leslie and her people have been doing on the hub study at Mount Dennis. RFQs, RFPs. These are the AFP contracts working with Infrastructure Ontario. We have closed on the maintenance facility, which is a combined maintenance facility for Scarborough and Shepherd, and hope to have an award to that contract at the board in October of this year. We also have got a request for qualifications closed for the Eglinton, Crosstown, and Scarborough projects, and hoping to issue an RFP to the approved consortia in the fall of this year. On Finch West and Shepherd East, we're in the process of updating our not environmental documents, the actual engineering documents to start preparing them for the in-market period. On bus rapid transit at Viva York, making great progress. This is in the area between Highway 7 between Bayview and 404. We're actually opening this section up around mid-August with Viva Next. So this will be the first dedicated rapid way where we're running right down the middle of the street. It's a major milestone. It's on schedule. We have 2 major contract packages left to award by the end of this year and early next year. And all of the construction on the York Viva program will be in play. And it is all moving very well and on schedule. And with that, I will...
Great job. Thank you very much. I appreciate your speeding through what is a fantastic amount of progress. Does anybody have any question to Jack? Francis has a question.
You can tell.
I could smell it.
I just wondered if you could give us a quick update. Are you still meeting with the Community Benefits Working Group? Where are things headed with that? I think at one point you had mentioned that there may be something being included in an RFI, so I just wondered where that's at.
So if I'll just go back to the RFQ slides, we have been meeting with them. We meet on about a monthly basis. What we are looking at is we've included in the RFQ for the Eglinton Crosstown some criteria for the contractors, the consortium that are going to be submitting on that, to do a couple of things. One is community benefits. How will you leverage your knowledge of local programs in terms of apprentice programs, etc.? How will you leverage the demand on jobs and try to parlay that into training people in the local community, and some of these communities have a lot of high unemployment, etc., and working with those groups. So we're looking to evaluate these firms on how they comply with some of those requirements. So we think it's
Will there be any other part of the rapid transit development that kind of work might go on?
I think that, well, initially we're looking at the Eglinton Crosstown. It's such a big bill, but I think the intent is beyond that. We would definitely look to try to move in that direction in terms of these are huge capital investments, and I think the response is, what can we do to the communities that are impacted by this? What can we do to try to provide them with employment opportunities and use these consortiums to do that? The other area that we are including in this RFQ, which is new for us, is a much higher emphasis on design excellence that we've talked about before, and Director McKenna has talked about. So we have added points in the evaluation for design excellence as part of the evaluation criteria. So we start the evaluation of these proponents, qualify the proponents, and then we get into an RFP. The other thing that we're doing right now is preparing the RFP documents, which will have additional requirements and guidance on design excellence, additional requirements and guidance on the community benefits program.
Thanks.
Marianne?
Jack, may I ask about the intersection between the planning studies that are ongoing for the Eglinton Crosstown at the public realm level, and how that intersection between engineering below grade and above grade public realm, how those conversations are going and what we expect in terms of how you view that integration long term.
We've been working very closely with city planning. City planning have been involved, and as well as our planning people through Leslie Wu and her folks, in what the Eglinton Connect study means, what kind of future zoning. We've been working with that committee as well as Build Toronto in looking at where are the key opportunities in the underground section and also in the surface section where there's development opportunities, and then how do we keep the project moving without sterilizing and preventing the ability of development to follow if it's not happening in conjunction with our project, but would at least we'd be able to follow it and tie into our stations. So we've got a number of discrete locations where we're looking at what we need to do to future-proof to some extent the ability of development, streetscaping, and all of these desires without sacrificing quality and without sacrificing schedule.
Jack, thank you very much. You're doing a heck of a job. Nicholas, I hardly need say that we're pressed for time because we're now 20 minutes behind where I need to be. I want to give Leslie Wu advance notice that your time allocations are reduced by 50%, as are all of your colleagues. Otherwise, we won't make it through.
The Customer Service Committee met yesterday at length and covered 7 main topics. Presto, the voice of the customer, is central to Presto, and the team presented 3 programs to demonstrate this. The recent Presto upgrade, which you've just heard about, the results of the first customer satisfaction survey, as you just heard, which were very positive and form a great baseline for the future, and finally the Presto panel, which will be launched soon. It's a new way for customers to voice their opinions online to help Presto improve further. The second thing we covered was the report on technology and information. Gary mentioned this, a 5-year IT program. Accomplishments for this year include the rollout of electronic station signs across all stations and the launch of Go Tracker. There's also many new projects planned, such as easier to understand online timetables, an updated Go mobile app that will have real-time data, and improvements in station announcement systems. The third item we covered was design excellence, which we were just discussing. In recognition of all the new buildings going up, new stations, Go stations and crosstown stations, we want these facilities to represent design excellence. So Metrolinx created an interim design review group in early 2013, and later this group will become permanent. The interim design group has reviewed 14 projects so far. 4 projects have completed the full process. So far, the expertise on the panel has advanced the design of these projects. For example, the final design for Whitby Go Station is more simplified, coordinates with the surroundings better, and has a more attractive facade. Operation and capital funding to support customer service was reviewed. The Go Transit funding approval from the Ministry of Transportation contains projects that will help to deliver on the 2013 through 2016 customer service strategy, and that includes, as you've heard, the introduction of half-hour headways on the Lakeshore line, increased parking across multiple stations, and improved platforms on Go stations. We reviewed customer security on Go Transit, really very important for the 65 million passenger trips a year. Making sure it's very safe for our customers. As Go acquires more train corridors, as you heard, we have inherited some areas more prone to graffiti and trespassing, which has pushed up issues. Go is managing this through better awareness and issue reporting by frontline staff. And Go will continue to measure itself against other transit agencies in North America. We had an update from Go's Customer Service Advisory Committee, which is very important to our decision making. The committee is chaired by board member Richard Coruscant, to my left, and they met last month. Members provided feedback on many key projects, including the recently announced investment strategy and Go Transit's new mobile website. We reviewed the Union Station revitalization. which is an extraordinarily complex process they're going through, and you've heard about it a little earlier, so I won't cover it again. And I'm looking forward to September when we'll have much more to report.
Great job, Chairman. Thank you very much. We've already had a presentation on much of that, so we can just continue. The next item on the agenda are the quarterly reports. This is an innovation for our public meeting attendees. In the past, we've received these reports in private session, and we thought there was no reason why we couldn't do it in public session. We ask each division leader to prepare a report on activities over the past quarter and to give this to the members of the board, to allow the members of the board to understand the movie as it's going along, so that individual presentations take place as snapshots out of the whole movie. So we normally just simply see if there are questions on any of these reports. We don't present each of them. They're taken as read, and when executives have already presented on their subject area, we don't invite even questions of them on the assumption of already being questions. And so we have the Union Pearson Express. We've already heard from Kathy Haley. Presto, we've heard from Robert Hollis. Go Transit, we've heard from Gary McNeil. Policy Planning Innovation, we're going to hear from Leslie Wu. So you hold your questions till we hear from Leslie. We're not going to hear from Judy Pfeiffer on Strategic Communications. Are there any questions to Judy? Is Judy here? There she is. You were sitting up here earlier, that's why I was down there. Are there any questions to Judy on her report? I see none. You've been busy though. Extremely. Nice work.
Mr. Chair,
please.
Are these reports on our website? Did the public get to see these?
Yes.
No, they do.
They do now.
So they can.
Previously
they can
we did
these.
not.
Okay, great.
That's why I'm taking them.
Excellent.
Treating the public the way we treat the board. We assume you've read them.
Yeah.
And it's only if there are questions. And then rapid transit implementation, Jack, you've already reported. And investment strategy, John Howe. Bruce has reported for you, John, on your remarkable amount of work and follow-up. Are there any further questions to John, however? Let me ask you, John, the same question I asked Bruce. Anything you'd change if you had a chance today?
I'd make no fundamental changes to the report. I think the report is technically sound, and we're providing the right set of information, data analysis to support an eventual decision.
Great. Are there any other questions to John? Bonnie does have one. I could
Just
sense
a quick one.
No, I sense there was one. Please.
Yeah. Is there an ongoing engagement, John, between you and government officials to understand at a deeper level the content of what's there? Because it's more than a nuanced report.
Absolutely, Bonnie. We have ongoing engagement in particular with the Ministries of Finance, Transportation, and Infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Great job, John. Thank you. And congratulations. The report really, you own the analysis and it's held up fabulously. And there are lots of differences with our recommendation, but no one doubting the analysis behind it. Really nice job. That brings us to the annual report. We have Stephen Smith and Robert Siddle. And Stephen, I think you're moving a recommendation.
Right.
This was reviewed at your committee?
Yes. So on the annual report, this is presented to the Audit, Finance and Risk Management Committee yesterday afternoon. In addition, I think part of the annual report includes also the financial statements. So we met with the auditors, Deloitte are our auditors, and they provide an annual audit, and they give us a clean audit opinion on our reports. We've had quite a bit of considerable growth over the past number of years compared to the 3 and 4 and 5 years ago. It's important, they were very thorough. We had an in-camera meeting with the audit partner from Deloitte's. They're very happy with what we're doing. So I have a motion, and I'll move the motion, and then if there's any questions specifically related to the annual report of the financial statements, either I'll answer them, more likely Robert will be able to answer them. So the resolution we have is slightly different than the board package. The board package has the annual report and the submission of the annual report, but let me read you to be more specific, is that the resolution is the audited financial statements for Metrolinx for the year ended March 31st, 2013 be approved, that the CEO submit the approved financial statements to the Ministers of Finance and Transportation, and that the Metrolinx annual report 2012-2013 be approved, and the CEO submit the annual report to the Minister of Transportation in accordance with the Metrolinx Act 2006. So I'll move that, and I think.
You got a seconder?
Yes, I'm sure I have a seconder, and then Mr. Parsons, another member of the committee. And let's move to any questions we have that hopefully I or Robert can answer.
Can I just ask a question on the wording of the resolution? Yep. Does that also accommodate the president being empowered to make editorial changes in the text of the report to the extent he's had feedback from board members?
That would encompass that, Mr. Chair.
So if you have any comments on particular points and points of expression, you're most welcome to give them to Bruce, and he'll take account of them if they're points of detail. If they're points of substance or principle, they should be tabled here. But if you have points of detail, feel free to give them to Bruce. Are there any questions to Stephen or Robert on the report and the financial statements? This is a moment of truth for us, reporting on our financial statements. On the other hand, the audit committee has done a thorough review, and so it's one of the things we largely delegate, but it's ultimately the responsibility of all of us. Rahul?
This may be offside, it's a comment, it's not a question, and the comment is, if anybody has any doubt about the tremendous amount of work being done in Metrolinx in the region, read the annual report. It's remarkable, I think it captures it wonderfully, and it just really does say how much is actually happening.
That's great, thank you for that. I see no other questions. Great job, Robert. If you can get it through that audit committee and through the board with no questions at the board level, you're doing a heck of a job. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? I see none. Congratulations. That brings us to Leslie Wu, who is going to give us the 5-year strategy as we roll it out another year for 2013 to 2018. Leslie, you were originally allocated 20 minutes to this, and you're allocated under 10.
Thank you. So I will be brief. This is a decision item for the board. We're recommending that, subject to minor editing, that this strategy that you've received be adopted, and that the President and CEO align our corporate budgeting priorities and performance planning with the strategy, and that we be authorized to post this publicly on the website. So I will just highlight, I have 3 slides I want to highlight in the deck. What's new this year, we've expanded and updated the environmental scan. We've increased and improved the alignment with the overall big move, and now that we have the investment strategy landed, that piece, we've clarified and updated some of the strategic directions. It's far more representative of all components of the organization, including UP, Express, and Presto, and RTI. And there is a stronger emphasis on deliverables that generate public trust and accountability. So in that regard, we have added a new category into the priorities. We sort of shifted the wording before as cornerstones and added the last bullet there, ensuring that Metrolinx is a trusted organization with the capacity and flexibility to deliver the big move. So this is our 3rd year doing the 5-year strategy. We're rolling over everything that was in it before. We've added the extra year, which is 2018, and then we're recasting and sort of organizing it because we know now from our feedback internally that the language around the cornerstones needed to be more elaborated. I'm not going to go through each of these objectives and deliverables, only to say that there are 3 new strategic deliverables in this 5-year strategy. We've now included the Design Excellence Program that this board approved in February of this year. We've spoken more to the delivery model evolution that Rob Hollis talked about for Presto. We've included the work we're now undertaking in the Regional Transit Traveler Information System. We've spoken to our increased capacity in INIT with the creation of a CIO office. We've elaborated more particularly the customer service strategy, which is now in its 2nd iteration. And we've added much more deliverables relative to public oversight and engagement in terms of our reporting back to the board. And that is my presentation.
Wow, that was a good job. Man, gold star.
So questions?
None of this should come as a surprise to the board, is that right?
That's
This
correct.
is all matters that we've discussed in strategy sessions, objective sessions. So there's nothing you want to highlight as saying, understand we're making a turn in the road here that we
No.
haven't previously discussed.
No, there's no, we're embellishing, I would say, more than deleting. The one piece I did mention is, of course, every year when we go through this exercise, we do a 1-year progress report and how we're advancing, and so that's also embedded in the report.
Well, it's a very, very good piece of work. Let me see if there are questions here. Francis is first.
The inclusion of the reference to design excellence program and all that, I think is really important. I would just note that we don't have the same kind of focus on the community benefits. And as a strategic deliverable, I think, we're doing it. We should also be writing it down so we can measure ourselves against results on the council.
Can you accommodate that, Bruce?
Yes, we
And
certainly
Leslie,
can. Yes.
in the text?
Yes, we certainly can.
It's a good suggestion.
And would you like me to table it with anybody here before?
No, it's okay. I think we
pass
could
this?
just, it's a good idea to capture it.
Happy to do it.
It's coming up at every meeting we have, so it's good to put it in. It's one of our things we've got our eye on.
Yeah.
Marianne, you've been a strong advocate of getting design excellence captured. It's now captured here. Is it captured here to your satisfaction?
Well, I think it's a long initiative. It is very hard to go from a design concept and a vision to the actual built form. And so it is, I will continue to advocate for design excellence. Sometimes to the frustration of other board members, but because you can't stop. And I think as any initiative that is on the table, but also recognizing that this is a new initiative, and there have been, I think this board has brought many new initiatives to the Metrolinx, but this is, I feel, personally very much and for the receiving public, a very important initiative. So we've had great support from staff, and I think the idea of embedding it in the mandate, vision, and mission of Metrolinx is a very important initiative, which I know my board members support. It can be taken out later, but for the moment it should be put in so that when people look to Metrolinx, they can see that as something that is not only operating on the ground, but is actually part of the largest visionary statement about what Metrolinx is about. So I'm very pleased, but I continue to be vigilant.
That's great.
And helpful.
And we appreciate your vigilance, and you've made a profound difference to us. And we've got is Beth here today?
She's not in the room, but
Okay,
she's probably listening online.
Good. Beth, keep pushing hard. You've got strong support from the board.
Design excellence officer, which I think is important, and transmitting to the larger culture of Metrolinx, and ultimately to the culture of IO Ontario's arm of actually constructing these projects. So I think that transmission has to happen. It's happened here and now has to go forward. And I know there were commitments to that effect from IO. And we'll see how that begins to articulate itself.
Thank you. And thank you for having pushed us to get to this. And Leslie, you've done a great job of picking up the idea and embedding it and hiring, so congratulations to both of you. Are there any other questions to Leslie? You're looking for approval, Leslie, of this document, incorporating the point Francis made.
Yep.
And again, leaving room for, as the motion says, subject to editing, that you're looking for approval. You prepared to move it, Howard? Janet, will you second it? Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Great. That brings us to the business plan for 2013-2014. Robert Siddle has the assignment. This also has been reviewed at the audit committee. This is a financial expression of all we're doing. And Robert, I think we've got the resolution seeking approval, which is approval unless the minister seeks changes, in which case you'll bring it back to us. And I might ask you to say, is there anything you need to draw to our attention, knowing it's gone through the committee?
So the only thing I would draw to your attention is to thank, on behalf of Judy Piper, Leslie Wu, and myself, the tremendous effort that all the staff of this corporation put in terms of pulling these three key backbone accountability documents forward. Again, this was a year where I thought we made significant gains in pulling these documents and bringing them forward so that they explain what we're trying to do and they link to each other in terms of showing where we are today in terms of last year and where we need to be at the end of this year and where we need to be 5 years out. So again, I'd like to just thank all the members of this corporation that participated in these 3 documents.
Stephen, do you want to add any comments from the perspective of your committee?
No, we did spend time in this yesterday again, and as part of our mandate to review this, and we have reviewed it. And I'm prepared to move the motion outlined in our board documents that we approve it, and also submit it to the minister in accordance with the law.
Maybe it's worth highlighting for us, Robert, what the fair implications are of the budget.
So the fair implications,
in terms of what you assume of ridership and what the price of ridership will be.
Yeah, so we announced, I think in December, a fare increase for this particular year. It is, as been presented here, we don't see any reasons within the year to issue a fare increase with respect to the specific, to 1314.
And your ridership expectations?
Our ridership, again, is growing as shown in this document. I think as Gary has talked about, we have a number of parking facilities that are significant parking spaces coming online. We have increased significantly the number of buses that we have in the system. They're providing service, and with the introduction of the 30-minute all-day service, there will be an increase in ridership. So again, we're expecting to be able to read our ridership projections for this year.
Questions to Robert? Very happy board. There've been years when we spent a couple hours wrestling over the budget.
Yeah, I just have an aside comment that came to me, Mr. Chair, and relates probably to the financial statements. I had a presentation reflecting our revenue. And what we realized is that although ridership was up, the revenue was down. And there's a unique feature that we have with our Presto cards. The advantage of the Presto cards is that it gives our customers the ability to maximize the use from a usage point of view of their cards. So I think on the old cards, you could buy a card for a month. And if you went away on holidays for 2 weeks, it was a rather tough luck. And of course, the way the Presto card is set up is that it absolutely maximizes your usage. So you don't have to pay for trips that you don't take. And we were trying to get a sense of that, and I guess it's come back from staff that that number is 3%. So de facto, as a result of the implementation of the Presto technology, we've essentially reduced the fares to the staff, to our customers in whole by about 3%. So it's an implied benefit of the new technology. Now, of course, that has the opposite side effect, of course, is we have now 3% less in revenues.
So, Robert, you're saying Hollis is costing us money.
Yeah, but the good news is that it's in our customers' pockets still.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the good news out of that. And it's fair.
Yeah, that's right. And encourages work-life balance.
And it's fair, So if you're sick or there's some other event where you can't use your tickets, you don't have to pay for it.
If there are no further questions, I assume Stephen's going to move.
I did move it already.
You moved already? Francis, yours a question or a second or a vote in favor? Seconder. And those in favor? Any opposed? I see none. That's great. Excellent job, Robert. You've got a total command of our finances. That's great. Leslie, you're back on. And we're not doing as badly now. And if you do this in, if we give 15 minutes or so to this, that's okay. In fact, as long as we're done by noon on this item, 20 minutes from now, including discussion, we're okay.
I'll try to be succinct as possible. This is an update of the next wave projects that were identified in the investment strategy. As you know, these projects were derived from the big move. They were identified as priorities. We have identified in the investment strategy proposals for how to fund the projects. So I am here to give you an update on the status of those projects relative to the sequence of planning, design development, and obviously construction is a ways off for these. The first of our next wave projects is the relief line. This project had been brought forward when we did the big move update earlier this year. I'm pleased to update you on the fact that, I'm just gonna go to this slide, that we have a standing working group with the TTC and the City of Toronto to integrate our efforts with their efforts, and the Relief Line Network study is out for an RFP. It was released within the week. It's online now. And what we are about to embark on is the state kind of a analysis. It's about 1.5 years long, the study. Stakeholder engagement. We will be looking at preliminary findings and evaluation criteria by the end of the year. We will list some options for the relief line in the context of the whole network earlier in 2014, with the goal to complete the study and bring it forward to the board with final recommendations in the third quarter of next year. So that's where that one is at right now. The Young North extension is currently, the EA was approved in 2009, and we're now advancing the work in the planning, design, and engineering for that piece. This is a very positive collaborative effort with York Region, and the project itself is estimated to cost about $3.4 billion. And it will take about 9 years in terms of taking it from inception to design and construction. Brampton Queen Street Rapid Transit, we recently completed this spring a benefits case analysis on that line, and we are currently with the City of Brampton, urban design study for that corridor is currently underway. This is a end-to-end, including the EA and construction, a 7-year effort estimated at about $600 million. The Dundas Street Bus Rapid Transit, this is going all the way from Brant Street in Burlington out to Etobicoke Center along Dundas. This bus rapid transit will take approximately 8 years from including EA design and construction. The EA, the environmental assessment, is currently underway in collaboration with the municipalities. The Durham-Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit, which connects Scarborough Town Centre with downtown Oshawa, it's 36 kilometers. We are currently in the planning phases of this corridor. It will take roughly about 8 years end to end, EA to construction and in service, and it's about $500 million. Hamilton LRT.
How long would it take to ride?
Sorry.
How long would it take to ride from Oshawa to Scarborough Town Centre, approximately, when this is up and going? Just give people a scale of this.
I'm guessing. I would say it's about a 40-minute ride. I could be completely wrong. I'll double check, but this is my somewhat educated guess. The Hamilton Light Rapid Transit. This is 14 kilometers of LRT. Hamilton has been a great partner in advancing our detailed planning and design of this work. We hope to be 30% complete of planning, design, and engineering. Well, not we hope to. We have reached 30%. And it's approximately a $1 billion project in 2014 dollars. Ontario Main Light Rapid Transit, which connects Port Credit all the way up to downtown Brampton, is in the stages of environmental assessment and preliminary design. It's fairly well advanced in terms of its AFP review, and we are hoping to complete that analysis and PDE work early 2014. Mississauga has been very proactive in advancing this work and integrating the project with their land use planning, their urban design, and public realm development. Go Two-Way All Day, which is sort of a multi-pronged project. Everyone's talked, and we're all aware that this, Saturday, we launched the 30-minute service on Lakeshore, so that's well ahead. There are several more corridors, the other 6 remaining corridors where we intend to incrementally introduce Two-Way All Day, and all of those corridors are in various stages of construction, planning, or in fact infrastructure pieces beginning to be done. And so that's a very large chunk of work and very comprehensive, and is one of our major transformational projects. The Lakeshore Express Rail and electrification, we're currently in the planning stages. We are undertaking an express rail study right now, which will be completed later this year. This is one of our more long-term efforts we're now getting to the two-way all day on Lakeshore. The next evolution on Lakeshore is going to be towards Express. Finally, the GO and Up Express projects, the electrification of the Kitchener line. As Kathy has already reported on progress on Up Express, I'll just speak to the fact that our electrification EA is underway for the electrification of the Up Express with the intention of the EA to be completed in next year, 2014. So in summary, this sort of gives you a little snapshot of where we are. We've broken down each project relative to the planning stages, the undertaking of an environmental assessment, and the design and engineering before we can even take anything to tender and construction. So these projects are moving to make sure they are in a ready state at the point when the revenue is able to flow to begin to put these in the way. So we have this constant, steady stream of projects towards the implementation of the big move.
Wow. That was a great presentation, but the work behind it is fantastic.
There's hundreds of people.
It is fantastic.
Yeah, it's hundreds.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
Questions, other than just my exclamations of delight?
Leslie, the relief line, the study that you've got underway there, I noted you said something about explore wider network options. What's that all about?
So let me, maybe I can just use it with to show you. So there, historically, the description of the downtown relief line, actually, it's not even odd, has always looked like the loop connecting back up to the Danforth, the Bloor line. We know that in addition to providing relief to just the downtown core, when we did the Union 2031 study, we knew that this line also has the ability, depending on where it starts and ends, to address region-wide capacity issues. So how much GO is able to carry or offload and how it's integrated with this line will enable us to have an investment that is not only directed at downtown capacity, but region-wide capacity. And so therefore we need to look at it broader than this little piece that I'm showing here and begin to look at it, at how it functions relative to the rest of the network. And in addition, it actually is very much related to the Spadina subway extension and the Yonge subway extension. So bringing all those pieces together, that has never actually happened. The focus has always been very much on the particular. So we're taking a system-wide approach.
Sure. Will that, in your estimation, change the actual physicality of what we're talking about, the relief line? Or is it just looking at it differently?
It could very well kind of modify the beginning and ending of that corridor.
And the TTC is simultaneously doing its own work on alignment, is that right?
They are very focused on this piece, which is they're now in the second phase of their downtown analysis, the commission. We are synchronizing our efforts with theirs to ensure they're in lockstep. But their work is actually very important, detailed input into our network study. So it's been quite a collaborative effort.
I think Richard had a question, and then Marianne, and then Lee.
So on, Leslie, on the relief line, does the discussion come into play about Union Station capacity as well? Does that kind of fit into that piece?
It does, because depending on the options we put on the table, it has more or less ability. So if you recall in Union 2031, we looked at an option that didn't go up to the Bloor line, it went west to Bathurst. Right. That not only deals with downtown capacity, it could have some impact on Union Station capacity.
So that thinking will be built into
this
process?
Built into this study, yes.
Great, thanks.
Marianne?
Well, did you just answer my question, which is, when I've seen that line before, it actually did a looping, it went west as well as east.
Yes.
So you're saying, in fact, that you've looked at it in terms of the capacity that's available, translating that capacity onto the east side rather than looking at east and west simultaneously. I knew the east was a priority, but the whole diagram.
So we're going to look at all of the above, so including just this. What if you went with the traditional definition of downtown? What if you moved it here? What if you went further north in terms, there has been put on the table ideas of it, the line on the east side going further north. So we're going to take a full look because it's been looked at in parts but never comprehensively.
Because the diagram has changed
Yes,
originally
yes,
saw
yeah.
it.
Lee?
Yeah, congratulations, Leslie, on the whole thing, but especially that piece. I think that the traditional way of thinking about things is that you had to build the downtown relief line in order to do other things further north. And I think that the idea of taking sort of stepping back a bit and looking at it from a system point of view makes a huge amount of sense, because we may find out that that there are other approaches that work better, or there are approaches that there's a sequence of approaches that provide better system integration and so on. So I think that not being tied to the assumptions of the past, but still understanding the problems of the present is exactly the right way to proceed. I have a point on another non-relief line matter. I just want to share something with you. Yesterday I was in Waterloo, and people were talking about the Union Pearson Express and all day ago and so on. And somebody said something that I have to confess I hadn't thought of before. And the folks were saying, we're really, really looking forward to getting better service to Kitchener, of course, but access to the airport via the Weston stop. And it struck me that our focus has been downtown Toronto and the airport, and that there's a whole other customer base potentially out there that are coming from the other direction that would come down to Weston and up. And I guess my question then is, in our sort of broader look at things, are we exploring that idea, or could we explore that idea?
So in terms of connectivity from the Wellington KW area?
Well, I think the connectivity is potentially there already. It's just the idea of a whole customer base using the up express, but from a totally different.
Are you saying getting off the train from Kitchener at Weston and then hopping on the UP Express and going back into the airport?
Yeah, because the traffic is awful, as you know.
Right.
So yes, that is part of our ongoing network analysis, and we continue to, and once Up Express is in service, we also will continue to monitor and adjust and adapt in terms of, as you know, in GO we're constantly finding ways to increase service as the markets emerge. So yes, we are looking at that.
Kathy Haley looks as though she's anxious to say
I
something.
just wanted to say that we're assessing all potential market opportunities. The ridership currently includes what's in the catchment area, but we are assuming new markets, and that is definitely one.
Great, thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
I see Janet and then Howard.
Just on the Durham Scarborough bus rapid transit thing, what's the final impact on Highway 2 when that is done? Is there still two lanes going each way at the end of it, or?
It's a bus rapid transit. The design analysis is now determining whether or not it would be center, sort of what the model that we have in York region. And in the analysis, they are looking at whether there are places, and sometimes it makes sense physically to move it to one side or the other side, but it will be a dedicated bus rapid.
Janet's asking whether it will reduce the lanes of traffic.
Yeah.
In some areas, it may very well do that. In other areas where it's constrained, in other areas it'll more or less stay the same amount of width. So there'll be a consistent profile, but we haven't gone to the point where we've done it bit by bit in detail. But we will look at that. The goal is to kind of balance off the road budget between roads, transit, and analyze how the car use will be modified when the rapid transit is implemented. To make sure we balance it off.
Because that is going to be potentially quite problematic if there's any reduction of those lanes on that stretch.
In York region, there was a similar analysis because there were similar concerns, so we will address it in a similar way.
And just to keep going on Jan's question though, in York, is there any place where there are going to be fewer lanes of traffic now than there were previously? Once the design was finalized, were we able to maintain?
I don't believe so. I'm looking to Jack, but I don't believe so. Yeah.
And with the objective for the Durham,
Similar,
Scarborough be
yeah.
the same, that there be no place where there be fewer lanes of traffic than previously?
The goal is not to reduce capacity, it's to increase capacity, so.
I think Janet and I, as Durham residents, probably feel a little more strongly than you do about the importance of not having 98% of the residents of Durham irritated with us that we have constrained Highway 2 as we do this. So if you took as a design objective, there will be no reduction and you'll accomplish it all.
It's quite possible because it is a fairly generous right of way,
Right.
so there's no reason why we couldn't set that as a deliberate objective. Explicit, I mean.
You're moving that, Janet?
Absolutely.
I'll second that. Mr. Anderson's a forceful voice.
Absolutely.
Howard.
And Leslie, the design analysis or objective with respect to the airport cluster from a business perspective?
Sorry,
How is that?
the business, could you say that again?
The airport cluster?
So there is we just put it on the market, we just retained the consultants to do a transportation study specifically for the airport area, not just the airport, because we're trying to get a better handle of, as we increase the amount of connectivity by public transit, how that's impacting the ability and the attractiveness of the jobs that are there now. So that's actually happening in a slightly separate study, but parallel.
I see, so that'd be reflected after.
Yeah, so it's linked, I don't know where that would be linked to, but it's not in any one of these specific projects, it's a parallel study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Francis and then Richard?
Excuse me if I should already know the answer to this, but in the GO 2A all day, when do you expect Barrie to come online?
So the Barrie Corridor, two-way all day to East Gwillimbury, it'll take roughly 2 years on the environmental assessment, and we are now, it's good to hear. We are now, we've started parts of that EA. We haven't actually, because we aren't fully aware of the funding as it's going. We haven't set for each of those corridors when they're going to happen. It's in that broader bundle, so I don't have an exact date for you, but we're working towards getting all of the corridors in place within the span of the next wave projects.
And what would the next step take then? Would be to do an EA from East Gwillimbury up to
well, the two-way all day that is in the next wave goes to East Gwillimbury. Okay. So going beyond East Gwillimbury would be our next wave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard.
Yeah, so Leslie, in some of the areas where we're talking about dedicated lanes, whether it's LRT or BRT, are we looking at sort of the goods movement side in terms of what the impacts will be, particularly if we're going to see potential reductions?
Well,
I'm thinking really.
Except in Durham.
But I'm looking at for those areas where we have very high levels of goods movement, like around the airport as an example. I mean, that's probably one of the most congested areas in terms of goods movement. Are we kind of building that piece into this somehow too?
So this is where we take our parallel work with the actual project development work and try to make sure that knowledge is woven into the design of the projects themselves. So both in the case, if I use the airport area as a case, the study we're doing on the airport area, in addition to a lot of the work that Peel Region has already undertaken, is foundational to our thinking, and that becomes part of the foundation in terms of how we model and analyze the project. So wherever we try to, and we're doing a lot of work in terms of urban freight within the region, and that we're trying to build up our knowledge, and that data becomes an input to the understanding of the projects.
And hopefully you're encouraging some of the other municipalities to do what Peel has done in terms of developing their own.
We try very hard. It's not on everybody's radar. It's not on the radar of all the municipalities, but we keep trying to make sure and engage them in that discussion, yes.
On your DRL study, we keep reading that people to the northeast think there may be a way to use the GO lines to take pressure off the Yonge Street line and have a cost-effective way of getting people downtown that's superior to, and faster than and superior to having to build a subway.
Yes.
Does your study of alternatives grapple with those claims as to what's possible?
We will
And
try.
we know that lots not
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
So-
We will, in this study, attempt to bring the evidence to bear and shine light on what are the facts, because we're not clear right now what's hypothesis versus fact, so we will bring that to bear.
And we keep talking about two-way all day, and we keep citing the fabulous announcement of Saturday about 30-minute service. What stands between 30-minute service and 15-minute service on Lake Shore? Is it profound, the difference? Impossible? Or is that just the next phase as we keep improving service throughout? So
That's the 15-minute gets closer to what we were referring to as the express rail. So we have to do a lot more work to understand what it means, the implications in terms of infrastructure, technology, type of fleet, and there's and Union Station as well, the impacts. So that's work underway, but that is the next evolution beyond two-way all day.
but for now, the goal is 30-minute two-way all-day service on 7 corridors would be.
That would be like amazing.
That would be kind of the realization of two-way all day, and then the next generation
Is
question
express-
would be, if there's still demand, can
Yeah.
you get it down to 15 minutes?
And if you recall in the big move, we identified that concept of the express rail not on all 7 corridors, but on certain corridors, and Lakeshore being one,
Right.
and Kitchener Georgetown being the other.
Bruce, you want to make a comment, and then we'll wrap this item up.
2 points. One is that I'd like to emphasize that two-way all day will actually be different things in different corridors because of the demand for traffic in those different corridors. So we're doing 30-minute service off peak on the Lakeshore corridor. That doesn't mean that we'll be doing 30-minute service on all corridors in the future. I'd just like to make sure that people realize that we will be tailoring it to demand in those different locations. The other piece is going to more frequent service, like down to 15-minute service on Lakeshore corridor. I think GO has proven its success by building ridership over time. So the key piece is to build ridership as we bring in this major increase in service and demonstrate that it continues to make sense and build that the hypothesis and proof for the future that we need to continue to increase the level of service.
Thank you, those are both important points. Leslie, great job. But and I know this is not just you. You've got a big team of people.
There's so
you're
many
really
people.
performing so highly. It's really
It
great.
was a privilege to pull it all together.
Really well done. Maybe your best presentation ever.
Ever.
It was great. That completes the work we wish to do in the public session of the board. We're going to go in camera with the board for a couple of committee reports we didn't get to earlier. Is there any other matter any director wishes to raise before we close the public session and go to a private session? I see none. Bruce, we're going to do a media availability after this?
Yes.
So for colleagues from the media, we'll be out in a few minutes. We got two things to get through, and then we'll be there. Thank you all very much for attending.